So even if you're not interested in after-school programs at all, Charisse, I'm still going to drop some good nuggets that you can apply to any other situation, whatever you're teaching, micro school, preschool. Like, this can be applied to other concepts. So keep an open mind. You do not have to have the desire to work with school-age children to get value from some of the information I'm going to share. It does not mean you have to go start an after-school program. All it really is an enrichment program. That does not have to be done after school. That's just what I found to work really well for my business structure and for my family structure. But this can be applied to something else. So just keep an open mind, okay? So, didn't lose anybody yet? I know, like, Charisse isn't the only one. I know there's probably at least 2 other people that are like, I'm not working with school agers like, at all. I will find you. Yeah, I see you, Kara. Yeah, so there's at least, statistically, there's at least one more in there that, like, is definitely never gonna happen. Yeah, because I was like that too. I was like that too. So I'll give you a little background about me. I found joy in February 2020, and I joined the 30-day challenge. I come from a government background. Well, you know, I'm ADHD, so I have a ton of background, but that was the most consistent background. 15-year government career, and I just really struggled to balance my family life and my professional life. And so after many years of dealing with that struggle, I knew I had to make a decision. You know, do you want to be really good at your job or really good with your family? Because I can't have both. Some people can. I can't have both. It's like one has to take priority. So I knew I had to make a change. I just didn't know what I was going to do. And really the change was spending the time I wanted to with my family and being the parent I wanted to be. I just felt like I was failing as a parent, you know, after I had my 3rd kid. You know, I was just like, I'm spending, you know, 20 minutes with my baby. It's like I reversed her, passed her to my husband, and I had to do homework with the other 2. I remember one night, it's like I looked, I finally had everybody settled, and I sat down on the sofa, and my husband sat next to me with no baby in his hands, and I'm looking at him crazy, like, where's my child? I'm ready for her back. My lap is free. The other 2 are in bed. I'm ready. He's like, oh, well, she was tired, so I put her to bed. It's 8:30. And I was like, what? I was like, I only saw her for 20 minutes. So yeah, I made him go get her out of the crib, and I was like, she needs to snuggle with her mommy. That's more important than her snuggling in the crib. So I was like, that will never happen again. And it didn't. I was like, it will never happen again. So February 2020, I found joy, and I did the 30-day challenge at the time. It was like a Saturday night or Sunday night, and you know, it said the new challenge starts Monday, you know? So I was like, it's not much time. I was like, what should I do? So jumped right in. We all know what happened next. What happened after February 2020? A month later, my dreams were crushed. I was like so set. I was like, this is the answer. I'm so happy. I love working with kids. This is going to be what's going to bring me home to my family. 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later, the world shuts down, and I'm crying to my husband. I'm like, oh my God, is this a sign? Like, I thought this was it, and like, I was like, nobody's gonna bring their kids to me. It's COVID, you know what I mean? I always planned to start my program that following September, so I knew I had a few months, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna stick with the plan. Maybe the pandemic will settle in 60 or 90 days. Maybe by September, everything will be good. And I'm gonna open my preschool in my house as planned. I was like, I don't have anything else to fall back on. I was like, I put my hopes and dreams in this. We're just gonna follow it through and just see what happens. So September 2020 comes around, and I'm ready. Open my doors. Nobody came through. It was crickets, because I was doing this, you know, the traditional model of 9 to 11:30. My families didn't need daycare, right? So it's a preschool program, not a daycare program, and they just didn't need it. So their preschoolers were at home, and I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. I still had my government job though, so I was juggling both. So I still had income, which made that a little bit less painful. A little, financially less painful. Emotionally, I was still like dying. And I was like, oh my gosh, and you know, I was like, what am I gonna do? And then I saw a post in one of the pod groups, you know, on Facebook, like a ton of those pod, you know, groups popped up because working parents still had to work and not everybody could telework. And a lot of people are like, I can't telework, I need some place for my child to go for virtual school. They're like, we're first responders, we work in a hospital, nobody will take our children because we're high risk for bringing something back. You know, they're like, we have nobody, we have to go in. We are the doctors, we are the nurses, we are the firefighters. You can't work from home, we need to go in. And, you know, I did not want to say anything. I'm very silent online. And I was like, okay, Natalie, you can do it. You can respond to this post. You can like it, click comment on Facebook, and respond to the post. And I said, hey, I have space in my classroom. Would you like to come in for a tour? And I have the capacity to help you with your child, who was a first grader at the time. And she was like, that is amazing. And she plugged my address, gave her my address, she plugged it into her GPS, and walked across the street. Turned out she was my neighbor. I watched her get in her car, drive 4 houses down, and then she was like, are you serious? Go back home, park her car, and then walk back out. She was new to the neighborhood, so she didn't know the street names. Had no idea, right? So I was like, well, that's a small world. And that's how I got my first school-age child. So I ended up opening up the classroom for distance learners. So I had kindergartners. I had a kindergartner who was just starting distance learner, and that it worked. I had my 2 kids at home doing distance learning. So it was very easy for me to accommodate other children because I'm doing it already. So that's because I was, dead set on preschool 3 to 5. That was my target. So that is what made me consider opening up to something different than I initially thought. I was like, I'm just gonna go with it and see what happens, because the preschoolers are not gonna come right now. There's just not enough of a need for it in my community. So that was my first student, and they kept trickling in. Everybody was looking for a place where their children could go so they could work. They couldn't work from home. And even if some of them, if they could work from home, it was just, they needed to concentrate. So then that one child actually just aged out of my program last year. So I was like, oh, so I kept them. So that's how my before and after school program was born. After the school started opening up part-time, my whole classroom was going back to school now, right? So all my students were school agers, and I was like, so did I have to rebuild my business? Like, what now? I was like, I've spent this whole year with school agers. What now? I'm like, and I enjoyed it. You guys, COVID sucked. It was so bad. But the silver lining was we had so much fun. It was one of the best years for my little school, for my family. We would have never been able to spend that much time together in any other capacity. You know what I mean? So it was just, we had a lot of fun that year. The kids did great. They learned a lot. And I got to spend more time with the teachers virtually, because my role was kind of like a learning coach and tutoring. They had their teacher online, but in that capacity, the teachers weren't able to meet the individual needs of 30 kids online. It's a struggle in person, right? So I was able immediately, if they're like, well, I didn't get that, I can zoom right in and give them the tutoring they needed, and they never even had to raise their hand. So learning-wise, they were just excelling so much. So there was no learning, gap there for them, because they just did really well having a learning coach there to kind of fill in those gaps on the spot. So we did. I love those kids now. I have the dream. I told them, I was like, when you guys are 14, get your work permits and they can come back and work in my program, because I just love them so much. But that's where it came from. They started going back to school, and the kids didn't want to leave. They wanted to stay. But not every family can afford to just pay me full time for their kids to stay here, right? And I didn't have a homeschool program or an enrichment program, anything at the time. So I was like, well, that same first parent was like, we still need coverage in the afternoons for 30 minutes or so. I was like, oh, another opportunity. And I was like, well, how about this? I was like, why don't I open up for everybody for before and after school? You still need a little coverage for them to get on the bus, because initially, when the kids went back to school, it wasn't like that traditional full day. I think it was shorter by an hour or an hour and a half as they started rolling the kids back into school. And some it was every other day. It didn't just go back to normal, right? It was that transition process. So I was like, okay, well, I can do that. So, and that's what I did, because the preschoolers in my community still weren't ready to come. right? COVID was still there. This was just the public school was opening back up. So I was like, I can do that. Okay. I was like, I can cover for, 30 minutes in the morning, an hour in the afternoon, and still do the enrichment activities I was doing with the children that they enjoyed so much, while simultaneously helping the parents just get a little bit more coverage as they're commuting home. It was a win-win. So that's how it was born, and that's the program I still have. That's my home-based after-school program. So that's a little bit how I got started and like my background. So the question I guess is now is like, how did I end up in the school district, right? Well, a couple years ago, I was like, I kind of have the itch. I did start my in-home preschool. It did come in 2021, but it still was never like full. It wasn't in like abundance, right? It was still a struggle. I had the marketing struggles. I was doing a lot of marketing, things from like the book. I was doing the flyers and stuff like that. I get a little bit of interest, but the community response still wasn't great. And I probably, did a little bit of a half-assed effort anyway because you still don't. You know what I mean? So I don't think I was like 100% putting myself out there anyway because you're still a little apprehensive. But I would get a student and I would still teach that class with one student. Because I'm like, I could still use the experience. So I still took the students, but still it was not like trickling in. So I was like, 1 year, it's like I went hard with everything. I extroverted y'all for a whole 30 days, not one day. A whole 30 days, I became an extrovert. I remember talking to Joy about it. I was like, we can do this. I'm gonna be an extrovert for 30 days and put myself out there on social media. I'm gonna go talk to people, kind of. That was a little stretch for me, but I was like, okay, we're gonna do this. And it was a long 30 days. I was like exhausted and still crickets. So I'm like, and I told myself, maybe that's not the direction I'm supposed to go in. I was like, is it this hard for everybody else? I was like, I don't know. I was like, am I missing a sign? I was like, maybe I just need to sit down and like take a break. And then I sat down and got some calmness, which is sometimes hard for me. Hard to focus your brain. And I just sat a minute and was just kind of thinking. I'm like, where do I go from here? And then I thought, and I'm like, I was like, I think you missed something big, Nat. I'm like, yeah, I was talking to myself in my head. I had a full-blown conversation. I had to talk to myself a little bit here. I'm my own best friend. So I'm like, all right, we're gonna talk this out. And I was like, you have never had to market for your after-school program ever. They've always come to you. Why are you not putting energy into what has naturally happened for you so easily, and you're putting all your energy into just the idea of a plan? I was like, you're missing the fact that these students have already told you that they want to be with you, they want to experience your program. Like, why aren't you even like trying to grow that at all? I was just so stuck on, no, but this was my original plan, this is my plan. So I was like, okay. I was like, well, all right, I'll shift to put my, everything into my after school program. And even now, like it grew, and I enjoyed it. I love it. I grew to love the school age children even more, and I still love them. They're just amazing. So I decided that year, I was like, okay, I'm gonna put my energy this year. The preschool's still open. That possibility is still there. I just wasn't gonna put all my energy into pushing it in my community. I was like, I have something that's already here and established. Let me see what happens when I just put a little bit more energy into that. Because I never like really committed to it, right? It was like the bonus add-on program, right? Loved the kids, it was great, but I didn't like create my whole business model out of it, right? So, so I put a lot of energy into it, and I had a ton of kids in that after-school program. We had a ton of fun, and I enjoyed it. And then I decided, I'm ready to get out of my home, because they're school agers. They take up a lot more space than a preschooler does in a house. They sure do. They take up a lot more space. And I was like, I had bought a house. It's not a huge house, but I bought a house. I had more space, but still, like, it's been 2 years now, right? I've done this for 4 years now total in 2024. But at that point, it's been a couple years. It's like, I'm ready to get out of my house, I feel like, want more space, more flexibility, a larger licensing capacity, things of that. I was like, I don't want to raise my prices anymore, so you got to get more students. I can't get more students. I'm in my home. I have 7, right? So I was like, well, what if I met them where they are? All my students, my after school students, came from the same school, and the school my kids went to. And I'm like, they're already there, so if I start a program at this school, they can still come to me at that location. Like, it's in their school, literally, right? So I was like, that might be something. And then it was so bizarre is that right at that moment, somebody who was on the PTA board had reached out to me saying, can you volunteer for the PTA? And I always, for years, turned them down. Nope, you're not sucking me in. I don't have time to volunteer. I was like, I don't have that much time. I got my home-based business. I've got my kids. I still have the 3 kids. And for part of that, I was still working my government job, tailoring that a little bit until I quit that. I did my business for 2 years before I quit my government job, which they were amazing. They knew what I was doing. I was very open and honest with them about needing to get out of it. So they allowed me to have a very flexible schedule, So I was juggling a lot. And so I was like, let me see. I was like, volunteer at the PTA. Like, I don't have that time. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. And because they said that they wanted me to do after school programs. And I was like, oh, this will be a great introduction to see what the process is, to see can I do it? How easy is it to, as a small person, I'm like, just a little business to get into a school. So I feel like they always partner with those larger chains and stuff. I'm like, can a small business like mine, cut it? Do they partner with that? So I did the research as the volunteer. I had to figure out the regs, and then, I did that in my government job 15 years. I can read a regulation and have it memorized in 5 minutes. I know regulations, period, right? It's my thing. And when I pulled up the school board regulations, I was like, these regulations are 3 paragraphs. I think one of the ones was 3 pages. I'm like, I'm used to reading 300-page regulations, in the government. I'm like, this is nothing. I'm like, oh, this is great. It was a pleasant surprise. So I read what the requirements were, the background requirements and everything, and it was very simple. And so I was like, well, let me reach out to the principal and see how they feel. I'm like, it's kind of weird since I'm the PTA volunteer and I want to offer a program as well, And it's like, no, that's fine, let's do it. This is the first time they're bringing after school programs back since COVID. So these schools haven't had anything for 2 years. And we know how the kids were after COVID, right? I don't know how it was in everybody else's states. Ours were very anxious. There's still a lot of anxiety that I'm seeing in my students at the school. And I'm like, they need programs, they need an outlet, they need something after school, right? So my thing is arts and crafts. What's my business name? Crafty Kids Preschool. There's a reason for that. I love crafting, arts and crafts. I like to work with my hands. I love DIY, anything with building. And I felt like that would be an asset to the children in school. So to bring it back to some concepts that you guys can use as well, these are immediately why I wanted to create a program at the school. Larger class sizes. The ratio in my school district is 1 to 25 versus my current 1 to 7. But I will give a little disclaimer there, just because you can have 25 doesn't mean you should, okay? It's just, yeah, that's why I tell people, just because you can doesn't mean you should. I don't want 25, that's a huge difference, right? 1 to 7 versus 1 to 25, the option is there, So I was like, wow, that's different. So that's a bonus already, right? How about, the second one was, it's an hour versus 3 hours or 4 hours. It's an hour, maybe an hour and a half, you know what I mean? Because it's after school. I was like, oh, well, that's nice to, you're not committed for a huge, long period of time. And another reason, which is one of my biggest reasons, is that I can bring my kids with me. Because my biggest thing was that I will work when my kids are not home, and I will never work again when they are. I'm here to give them my attention and be as present as possible. So that's why, the school age thing, I just never thought would work. But I'm like, my kids can come. I even brought my baby. She's been coming to my classes since she was 10 months old. I brought my kids with me. So I'm like, this is great. And it's a fun class. So we actually are having a lot of fun. We're doing a great fun activity. So that was great. They were like my little assistants. When I had my home-based students stay after with me for my class, they were my little assistants too, and they loved it. They felt like little celebrities. You're like, yeah, I go to Miss Natalie's home. Yeah, you know, oh yeah, play with her dog, you know? So they loved it. Like, oh yeah, I saw Miss Natalie at the pool. I'm like, we did. So, you know, they loved it. They loved that they had that little extra. So it's just a lot of fun. Now the big things that you're really gonna love about this is there's no startup costs. And I'm gonna tell you how. There is no financial risk. You can't get that very often, right? How about this? Another positive benefit was I didn't have to build any no like trust factor. Why do you guys think that was? They already go to the school. I just took it from the school. I borrowed it from the school. Parents already trust the program at the school because their kids are there for 7 hours a day. They don't care what my name is. My flyer didn't even have my business name on it. At all, because I had to put it together in like a day. I don't have time for that, you know? It literally, I think I put my logo like last minute in the upper like left corner. Even my friends, like the parents who go to school, didn't know it was my business. They had no idea. They're like, oh wait, that's your program? Yeah, I didn't put my business name on it. I didn't have time for that. They don't care. They want to know how much does it cost, what is the activity, and what are the times, right? So, when I enjoy it, you probably remember that too. The first time I sent my flyer home, I made the copies, gave it to the school. That's another thing, zero cost. You don't have to, didn't have to pay for the flyers. Use the PTA paper, and I went into the school and made all my copies. Kara?
What do you charge?
The price will depend on your school district, and I'm gonna get into that a little bit more later.
Awesome.
But I'll come back to that because that's gonna be good too, about like the money and how I collect it. I'm gonna get into that as well. But here's how you're getting $0 in marketing. It costs you nothing. Because it's at the school, they're picking programs that will benefit their population. They're not gonna charge you for any of that. You're there to bring benefits to their school. So my marketing is free. They make Facebook posts about it, they send home newsletters, they put my flyer in 901 folders for free. I didn't have to pay for ink or paper. What? Here's the next thing, is that parents are going to prepay for the whole session. There is no recurring billing, there's no doing all the strike stuff. One-time payment, right? So, Kara, to answer your question about the prices, your school district may determine what you're going to charge. So my regulations say that after-school programs cannot charge more than $20 per hour per kid. Okay? So if your class is just an hour, it's $20 a kid, that's your price. You can go lower than that, you just can't go higher. You can add a supply fee on top of that, but I don't do that. Because as a parent, I hate separate charges. Everything's always wrapped into one, you know? But you can, so you'd have to check that out with your school district regulations. Another great thing that's free as well is I didn't have to pay for the space. Now I will warn you though, if you ever decide to use the school space, some will still charge you for the space, but it will be greatly reduced. I have run into some people where it's like, oh, they're charging me $11 for the space. That's cool. I'm getting paid $200 to be here for an hour. I'll pay $11, you know? But I was like, I didn't have to even pay for the space. So that's a benefit. I'm gonna circle back to that too, and how you can use this program for cash injections into your business. All right, let's see. Oh, another thing that was great is that you're actually given a lot of flexibility. Just because you have an after-school program and you choose to offer it, doesn't mean you have to offer it every session. You don't even have to offer it every year. You know, you have total autonomy over that, you know? Offer it when you want to. Maybe it's just a really bad year or bad semester. All right, well, instead of just accepting the loss, maybe schedule an after-school program for that semester. It's not ongoing for years. It's, you know, it's usually broken down either 2 sessions or 3 sessions. You know, and that's it, that's your commitment. 3 months, you know, you can make it last for 3 months, you'll be okay, right? So it doesn't mean you have to do it all the time in your business, but it is a way for you to do something really, really fun that doesn't cost a lot of money, and give a really good cash injection into your business, okay? Because all the payments are coming up front. It's great. I mean, and choose your class size. I mean, think about it, $20 a kid and you choose to do 25 kids. That's, I mean, it's a lot. I mean, I was getting $5,000 cash injections, $10,000 cash injections, doing what I love to do. You just can't beat it. And another good thing is because you're getting all the money up front, you're gonna use that money to go buy your supplies. Don't ever buy anything up front. You're gonna use that money to go get your supplies. To, anything that you need, you already have the money for. So you're not taking the risk of buying stuff and then not working out, and then like, what do you do? I've done that before in prior businesses. I'm like, oh, that wasn't a good idea. He's like, I went prepaid for all these like shirts and stuff and I can't sell them. So that's, that's also really, 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 really fun. All right. So another cool aspect of adding something like this is that it shocked me in the last couple of years is that I told you I stopped marketing for preschool. I never actually started it back. Never started marketing for preschool again. What happened was the after school program started funneling students into my preschool. I never anticipated that aspect. But the parents were like, they would go check out my website and click on all the other stuff I offer and get on my wait list, and then email me, hey, I just got on your preschool wait list. Like, when are you gonna open up registration for next year? And I'm like, I'm not really going to. But I'll think about it. I was like, all right. I was like, it's a little bit early. I told you about that, Anita. I was like, well, it's early. I kind of think in 30-day cycles. I'll let you know in a few months. Then they join again. Hey, when are you opening up for registration again for preschool? And then several more started doing that. And I'm like, well, this is bizarre. I'm like, well, maybe it's time to revisit preschool, because I love teaching it. I just felt like it was so labor intensive to try to get the program out there, because I'm not extrovert. I wasn't super visible. It's like everybody knows who you are, but I wasn't super visible. I'm not known as the preschool person. I am now, but I wasn't at the time. So that put more eyes on my business in a different way that I didn't expect. That ended up filling another program just from doing this one. So it was a great way to grow my email list, because each session you might have totally new students. So let's say if you do have 25 kids, you might have a different set of 25 kids the next session, and then the next session you might have a different set of 25 kids. So my list has been growing because of that. So that's a great thing, because then now I can just remarket from them. I don't have to rely on the school for the free marketing, because I have the email addresses now. So I can just always, go through my email list now. For summer camp, I can go through my whole email list now. So that's great as well. So I really enjoyed that. It was nice to have the younger siblings in my class, and then I see the older siblings when I go to the school to teach. And they always run up, Miss Natalie, give me hugs, and then, then I see their sibling there, and it's great. We're like a family. So it was awesome, and I loved it so much. So to circle back on the filling my preschool program. It filled up so quickly because of the concept of the know, like, trust factor. Because I kind of initially borrowed it from the school, that they started attaching it to me and not the school. So initially, they don't know me, but I was able to transition it to now they know me, they've had experience with me. I've got my community's know, like, trust factor now. So now it makes it a lot easier for me to apply that to any other programs I start or choose to do. And it sticks, which is nice. So yeah, let me see, I'm gonna make sure I cover any questions so far?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So where did they put you at the school?
Wherever I wanted. I chose.
I'm on the PTA, and I know that our teachers are a little possessive of their classrooms, and so I'm just curious.
Yeah. I don't do classrooms. It depends on your school district. Some let you reserve space in classrooms. I feel like it's a personal space, even though it's not. But to me, it's a personal space. So I've never had to use a classroom. So if there's a space that's not a classroom, I'll always encourage use that pod area or cafeteria. I would say like a teacher's classroom, I feel like would be the absolute last resort. I would teach it outside before I would do a teacher's classroom probably. But the culture could be different where you are, but no, I don't use classrooms. Some schools allow it. This school has like pods where it's kind of like the meeting area in the middle and the classrooms are kind of around it. And those are the areas I want because they're a little bit smaller, more intimate. I found that when I was in a larger area, it just gave the kids more space to kind of like run away. You know, and just use more. They're gonna take up every bit of space that you give them. So if you don't want them, I have a routing class, I love that. So, but if you don't want them to have a lot of space to like run, because they will run if they have space to run, who wouldn't, right? So if you don't want that, I wouldn't go and rent or reserve a large space. They will always use the space you give them. So if you wanna keep it, you know, it's kind of like indirect classroom management. You know, here's a small space, they're not gonna be as likely to run in it because there's not the space they need to really pick up that speed they want. You know, they'll bump into kids, so that like indirectly kind of keeps them a little bit, you know, controlled for safety. But yeah, I will just, you know, request the space I want if it's available. If my target space isn't available, I adapt and I'm flexible. I will go anywhere. I teach outside. You know, I read how the students are feeling. There's some days they're just there's one day and all of them were just a little bit off, you know? And so I was like, okay, we're going outside. I picked up all the supplies, like, kids, help me, let's pick everything up. And we went out to the fields. And we did track races and came back. So it's about having fun, right? They've already had their curriculum all day long. They're not looking for that from me. I'm teaching something else, you know? I focus on STEAM, arts, and crafts on the surface, but I'm really teaching problem solving. I'm teaching, you know, fine motor skills, gross motor skills. You know, we throw in OT in there. It's like crossing the midline, bilateral integration. Like, it's deeper than that, you know? So we can do that in any setting. I don't want them sitting at a desk all day. I've taught one session where I got rid of all the tables and chairs and put workstations on the floor with tarps from the dollar store. And those were their workstations. So they were laying on their belly, sitting down, laying on their side, whatever they wanted to do, because I just didn't want them in tables and chairs at that time. And that's my preference. Yeah.
I know it probably depends on the school, but how much of the cleanup are you responsible for? Do you have to take out ginormous trash bags at the end of the day and things like that?
No, it probably does depend on the school. My personal philosophy is I always leave the space cleaner than I find it. Sometimes I go in and the space is already trashed because it was just a hard day for that grade level. You know what I mean? It might have been the kindergarten, first grade pod, and you know, sometimes I'll see, you know, paper towels balled up and thrown. Like, I'm like, oh, they had a rough day today. So I will clean it up. It doesn't bother me. So I always leave it cleaner than I find it. And I wrap that into my schedule to make sure I can keep it clean. But I also put the responsibility on the students as well. They help set up and they help clean up and they love doing it, so it's never an issue. I also forge, like, creating connections and relationships is very important to me. And so I have a very close relationship to administration and the custodial staff. They literally won't let me clean now that I've been in that school so long. They're like, no, Miss Natalie, don't do that. See how big my room is? Don't do that. And I'm like, I appreciate you. And I give them gifts, like, they're always on my list. I give them Christmas gifts. I'm like, I know I have a messy class and I appreciate you taking the time to help me out with the cleanup, you know? So it's very important that you take care of the staff who's around your class, because they will help you.
Is it from like after school until 6 or what time?
Read it in your regulations. For our school zone, all after school programs need to be over by 5:30. So the first year I did it, our school ends at 3:30, so I did 3:30 to 5, because I always start with kind of like snacks, circle time, things like that, and to allow for cleanup. And then this past session, I shortened it to 4:45. But I'll never go past 5, because then, like, if it was a rough day and I do cleanup, that still gives me time to clean. And I just don't wanna work that late. Paula?
I've always homeschooled, so I have absolutely no connections to PTAs, principals, anything. How would I get started doing something like that?
There's lots of choices you have. And even though if you're not in a school, you don't have to use the schools just to put your program in. You can also connect with them for marketing purposes as well. I'm learning about all kinds of marketing you can do with PTAs, even though you're not gonna do a program there. But if you're interested in going to the school, all they care about is that you have something that's going to benefit the students. You don't have to know administration. That was just easier for me to get started because I was always so nervous about it. But I reached out to 10, 15 schools without knowing the administration at all and get the same results. It's just about offering something that benefits the students.
So is it better to reach out to the administration or the PTA?
I go through, and I actually have, I can give it to you guys now. I don't know if you guys have already downloaded my after school programs guide, but it walks you through step by step, literally everything you need to do to get started. But, oh, you know.
Can you help pass out?
Sure.
I have a handout again.
Yeah. But it's a QR code, everybody looking for QR. So you can just scan that QR code and like download the guide. But I'll give you a summary of it as well. What was the last question you asked about getting in?
Is it better to go to the administration?
Okay, that was it. So the first step that I do is I go to the school's website. And if there's usually a link for PTA, if that PTA website lists a person in that role, either after school program or like the PTA president, I will reach out to them first. Because usually they're the ones that are picking the programs, because usually it's a PTA sponsorship, right? That's how I get the space free, is that I go through the PTA and the PTA is like, oh, I think our parents will like it, and then we can push it up to the principal and they sign off on it, and there you go. You know, that's how you can get it free. I can also just go and reserve the space myself and just pay for the space. Either way works, just depending on what you want to do. But I reach out to the PTA first. But one thing you have to remember is it is a volunteer position and people have lives. So 50% of the time you might not hear back from anybody at the PTA. That's when you can reach out to administration and just say that you have this program. Keep it short. We always want to like spit out all the benefits of our programs and everything and create this great like novel. Don't do that. I had to stop myself. Literally all it says is, hi, my name is Paula. I have this program that I really think would benefit your students in K through 3, or just a little bit of detail about it. Do you have some time this week or next to discuss it? Keep it short. You want to get them on the phone or you want to get in there in person to then give those details. I mean, how many times do you get an email where it's just overwhelming, and they don't have a lot of time? So if they see it's really long, they might not prioritize reading it because they don't have a lot of time. So you gotta keep it short and sweet. They just don't have the time, they're overworked, So short and sweet, and I usually get responses just from that. Yep.
How long is one of your sessions?
So that might just depend on the school you're going to. It's easier for a school if the programs are kind of like on the same kind of schedule. Now, if you decide that you want to rent the space and you're not going through like the PTA or anything like that, you just want to use the space and offer your program, you can choose whatever you want. The more sessions you offer, the more paperwork you have. Just keep that in mind, right? So I do it twice a year. I have like a fall, winter, and then like a spring, summer. But many have 3 sessions where it's just like fall, winter, spring as well. But that's 3 times you're enrolling. So I prefer to just enroll twice. That's just, just to keep it limited. Mine end up, because holidays fall into there, I never meet on early release days or holidays. So mine tend to be between 10 to 13 classes when I split it up that way.
Is it weekly or?
Weekly, once a week. Now, I prefer small class sizes because it's easier for me, and I feel like I attract a lot of neurodivergent students, and one-on-one is very important to me. So I keep my classes small, but I have usually 40 or 50 kids in that program, and I just don't want them all at once. So I will have my program running 3 days a week, but it's a separate cohort on each day. I have like a Monday class, a Wednesday class, a Thursday class, so that I can still get everybody off the wait list and still have a quality class. But if you're teaching something that you can handle 40 students with an assistant, like that's fine. You would just want to rent out the cafeteria. It's just too big for me. It would overwhelm my brain. But I still want, you know, all the students, so I will open up new days as it fills up.
So you're not doing like Monday through Friday, keeping the kids until their parents get off work. This is like a
Nope.
specific program once a week. We're doing some fun stuff.
Yeah, like I said, STEAM arts and crafts, so I do curriculum, like we're working on, you know, certain skills and activities.
Okay. I was just thinking after school, like.
You can, but no, it's a, you know, hard pickup at 4:45, but it benefits many parents who need
Right.
time to get home. But the school-based program, it's enrichment. That's why I say you can like apply it to anything else. Like you can partner with, like in my state, like we have several homeschool, like programs that are in like office parks, or, you know, we just have some like of those larger like co-ops that do enrichment classes. You could partner with one of them, and if you wanna teach during the day, you know, that after school hour is like weird, which it is for a lot of people. So who's home during the day? Homeschoolers, right? So you can partner with a homeschool center to come in and teach your class at their center. You can decide you wanna stick with preschoolers and maybe reach out to a daycare and see if you can offer an enrichment program there for them. I have partnered with play areas and offered classes there. I'm like, in their party rooms, like, I'm like, when is it, you know, when's your least busy time? Let me see if it can be mutually beneficial. Can I get more people to come in during that time frame and I can get the space for free, you know? And so you can go to an indoor playground, but anything that has a party room would have a space for you to teach at. And you could do that anytime, like if you want to do parties for it. I've been on the fence thinking about that. I'm like, do I want to break into like the birthday party scene? So I always said I don't work weekends, you know? So I don't know, thinking about it, because it is a lot of fun. You know, you can always hire staff. I've hired, let's see, one session I had 3 teachers. I've hired, you know, 5 people to help me teach these, because I still have my in-home program. I can't be in both places at once, you know? So I've had up to 5 teachers helping me to teach all the classes. But if you do the math on it, it's like, let's say you're doing, you know, $200 a class and you're doing 5 classes a week for an hour and a half of your time. And you get all of it in one big lump sum. That's a huge cash injection, and that covers 3 months and not a whole bunch of your time. And you're having fun. Really, like that's the element. You have to do something you enjoy doing. You have to pick like something, think of a hobby, you know, chess, you know, you can even do yoga, taekwondo. If you like sports, you can do soccer. Like think of something you enjoy doing and bring that in, like anything. Reading, I went to do a book club.
We even taught like, you know, twirling, majorettes,
Yeah.
we taught the younger kids, or like cheerleading, it just,
Yeah.
I never.
Cheer is big, I will tell you that. Cheer is big. The
ASL.
kids love it.
Question,
Yeah.
sorry, I just wanna make sure did I skip?
I wasn't sure. I think, I'm gonna hit Carrie, I think, has had her up a little
Okay,
longer.
go for it.
If you end the session earlier than when the school's other programs end, where do those kids go? And then that parent can't
Home.
pick them up. The parent can't pick them up that early.
You don't get any of that information. You don't, we're not privy to that information.
So somebody else in the school would.
Their parents pick them up. My program ends at 4:45. On the registration form, they tell me where that kid goes at 4:45. Is it parent pickup? Or is it an after-school program that's gonna pick them up? Or the in-school, after-school program, I'll escort them to that program? Or a grandparent gonna pick them up? Because we're not there to provide childcare. So it has nothing to do with childcare. That's not even an aspect of this, you know? So you'll never have to worry about that, because the parent who can't pick up at your ending time is not gonna register for your class. Because it doesn't meet their need, right? Yeah.
So I just wanted to understand your pricing correctly, how you
Yeah.
kinda did it. So you were saying for your sessions, you do 2 a year, but you're only charging them $25 for that session?
You,
No.
a day,
Per class, so you're doing the 25 times
times 10 students, and that's why I get 1 day.
or times 10 classes? Is that what you're doing?
So let's say, I'm just gonna keep the numbers clean. So let's say I'm charging $20 a class, and I have 10 students in my class, that's $200 every time I teach, that's per class. If I'm teaching the class 5 days a week, that's 200 times 5.
But you're saying the parents are paying it up front, they're paying the full amount for
Yeah.
all 10 classes.
So if it's $200 for the session, they're paying that $200 to sign up for the session.
Okay.
Yeah, my last session, was $300. They pay that $300 at registration, and that covers them the whole session.
And how do you have to pay?
The hub,
Oh, okay.
everything's through the hub, come on, yes, the hub.
Is it through
Uh-huh.
your website, like your website?
Yeah, yeah,
You did it direct.
you've got, yeah, all of it's in the hub, you set it that way, same registration form in the hub, and then create your product, and it's just not a recurring product, it's just after school program, the session's $300, when they go to the checkout page, it populates at $300, and they pay for the product, takes them to the thank you